Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Friday, May 9th, 2025, and Bibi Netanyahu made a boo-boo. His relationship with Trump is on the rocks, apparently, and that's interesting to me. I find it interesting timing, right? It's very, very interesting with all of the things that are going on in the world, and who knows how this is all going to play out. I really have no idea at this point in time. China's economy is failing. One of the reasons why I don't know how it's going to play out is because sometimes in things in normal times, you can reasonably predict how kind of diplomacy is going to go. They're all going to get together, small changes will be made, tinkering around the edges, and that's that. And right now, it seems like we're in a war, and in a war, things can happen that don't go according to plan. The plan is X, but Y happened. And so now you have to deal with Y while trying to still achieve your plan of X, right? Trying to get the beachhead or trying to get the city or take the town, whatever it is, take the territory, whatever it is, you still have to do that while also dealing with the crap being thrown at you because war. So I don't know how it's going to play out because it seems like we're in an active situation and there are things happening to counter everything. All of the things, any kind of rational policy put forward by Trump or by anybody really gets countered. Brexit, for example, is being countered now by Starmer and the EU through different ways, different mechanisms to make it more difficult to undo for the British people. So you see what I'm saying? There's measures and there's countermeasures, and we're in a war, but we can't perceive we're in a war because the movements are either behind closed doors, like the EU and Starmer working together to bring Brexit back, or they're so slow, you just get used to it and you don't remember that your parents hated that idea and thought that it, was bad for the country or whatever it is. So it moves slow. We don't discern that this is happening, and then all of a sudden we're yards away from where we started, right? And we don't even realize it. So that's problematic. And we're going to start the show with a guy who talks about the England he fought for, and it's not this. So very interesting. China's economy may be failing, and I find that interesting because there are a whole lot of people saying, and I don't have the tab. I thought I had the tab, and now that I'm talking about it, I realize I don't have it. But there's a tab that is talking about how Trump may be unwinding the trade tariffs, the tariffs on China, because of concerns around stock in American stores. But my immediate gut thought is that's an opportunity. If China makes a widget and now that widget is not sourceable from Walmart or something like that, Walmart can't get that widget because it doesn't make any sense to sell, a little bottle opener for, what would be a $5 item is now a $30 item because it's made in China, right? So you source that locally. So there's an opportunity there, and that's jobs, and right? Like, doesn't that make sense to you? So I don't know about this rumor, which is why I probably didn't tag it in the first place. But then there's other people started talking about it, and I tried to find it, and it didn't work out. So I don't know, man. The whole thing is not sure, right? I don't know. We're gonna see how it all works out. Anyway, the Department of Justice removes trans people from service in the United States after a Supreme Court decision that supported the Trump administration's initial executive order. The NDP might go bankrupt in Canada because a whole bunch of their candidates didn't pass the threshold to get the money for their votes, basically. So the Canadian public, the Canadian taxes don't have to subsidize the failing NDP. So yay, that's good news. Invasion of the fat black women statues. I showed you one yesterday, and it was in, I don't know where it was. I think it was in the United States, but there's one in England. There's one in Australia. There's one in Italy. I think there's one in Italy. And I think that's just, to Italian women. Can you imagine? So, I knew an older Italian woman. She would not tolerate that kind of crap. And we've got to start with the Pope, right? Actually, we've got to start with this guy talking about how England's not the country he fought for in the Second World War. But then we're going to start with the Pope. So that's pretty interesting stuff. Here's this gentleman. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. This Queen Natalie says, this 101-year-old war veteran said on the 80th VE Day that things are different, and this is not the country I fought for. Bless him, he's right. It's shameful that these people sacrifice themselves for our country and for us, and for what? So this is an example of we are yards away from where we started, yards away from where we think we are, because we didn't really consent to moving this distance. And this guy remembers what it was like fighting for England in the Second World War, and he says, things have changed quite a lot. You can't perceive it because you're living in it, right? It's like swimming in water. Maybe a bad analogy, but as you look back and say, wow, We've really changed as a society. We've really changed. We have. It's very, very, very concerning. Here's this gentleman. Here you go.
No, I think things are different. In fact, to be honest with you, this is not the country I fought for. In my opinion, anyway. You know, things are different, and I don't know what would today. I think if the same thing was to happen today with the younger generation, I don't think they would cope as well as we did. No, I think.
And the funny thing is, he still doesn't understand the whole history behind what happened to him and what he fought for, and the fact that he was fighting with the globalists against. Well, we'll not get into that for now. Let's talk about the Pope. Comage says, "I'm an atheist, but the new Pope is against. Is a turf," and he says. I had some hope for Pope Leo. I had a little bit of hope for Pope Leo because I saw this kind of stuff coming out. I thought an American Pope, he's going to be, I saw the Babylon Bee says the chimney at the Vatican had a bald eagle emerge firing an AR-15, and so that indicated an American Pope, and I thought that was hilarious, right? So I had some hope for this Pope. Here it says, this is a quote from the Pope, and he says, this is from before he was the Pope, but this is attributed to him. "The promotion of gender ideology is confusing because it seeks to create genders that don't exist." So I thought, hey, like this is going to be a MAGA Pope, right? This is good. And unfortunately, no, this is not the case at all. Richard says there's nothing traditional about Pope Leo. He's a protege of some other guy, who will consolidate and carry forward the liberal, progressive, globalist takeover of the church and build a bulwark versus Trump and conservatives everywhere. The faithful remnant will be increasingly isolated. So yeah, that's pretty terrible. I hope they're wrong. Alex Jones says they're right. This is Richard again sharing Alex Jones' 18-minute interview with Leo Zagami, and apparently a Vatican insider who reveals how the new Pope is a continuation of the globalist takeover of the Catholic Church and will be used to wage war against the President Trump. Now, the church is meant to kind of be this, to be changed from a Catholic church that worships God, etc., to a church that kind of offers the globalist governance or the globalist religion for everybody. And the globalist religion is going to be based off the United Church in Canada. And if you go to a United Church in Canada, you'll see the rainbow flag and all the rest of it. And they're kind of trying to meld this together and say, this is Christian and this Catholicism is Christian, and we're going to bring it all together. And that's what they're basically, according to conspiracy theorists, that's what they're trying to bring about in the Catholic Church, in the Vatican, and so on and so forth. And so I don't know. We'll see. Richard says, people saying give the new Pope a chance. He may be a unifier, but Leo Zagami makes the right call. This Pope will carry forward the liberal globalist agenda within the church, further proof the globalists are consolidating their power on the eve of introducing their dystopian New World Order. So 2030 seems to be important. CTV News confirms everything I've been saying in one sentence. Here it is. What's in a name? Pope Leo the 14th's choice signals a commitment to social justice. Oh, man. With that, everybody loses, right? Like, it's unfortunate. Oh, that was possibly too loud. I'm sorry. I was trying to make the other guy loud enough. With that, everybody loses, unfortunately, right? And CTV is celebrating the end of the Catholic Church. Data Republican talks about the Catholic Church and what's been going on with them. And she says the Catholic Church inserted itself into U.S. political discourse by taking enormous federal awards for mass immigration. As Christians beyond Protestant or Catholic or otherwise, we are justified in holding those who claim to represent Scripture accountable. One thing I feel very strongly about is that the ban on proselytizing and accepting a federal award is a direct contradiction of the Great Commission. It's also a top reason why I did not accept a federal position in the end. I would have lost my main means of spreading the gospel, and I really question any Christian institution that depends on federal awards for its financing as a result. So it's just interesting. She didn't take a job within the federal government because she wouldn't have been allowed to talk about her religion or God or anything to that effect, which is interesting in and of itself. But then she's talking about how the Catholic Church is getting behind the progressive policies and putting its money where its mouth is, basically by taking federal money and resettling people, et cetera, and getting on board with the mass invasion policies. That's a problem. And that's part of what I mean by the globalist church. They've taken control of it and then used the church to accelerate globalist agenda and say, this is Christian, this is good, this is how you become a good person. And I have huge issues with it, because I don't think that you need an institution to have a relationship with God. I think that you can do that personally. That other voice in your head, that's God. Okay. But not, well, probably. You don't have another voice in your head? We'll talk about that later. So, but you don't need a medium to have that connection. I think that connection is inbuilt in you, in us, in all of us. And so that's why AI is so dangerous, because there is no human connection. There is no connection to that. And that's why they want to build it. Anyway, I digress. Let's talk about China. Tom Quiggin says something big is happening and bad is happening in China. China has gone dark in reporting the following land sales, foreign investment, unemployment numbers, business confidence, numbers of investors in financial markets, real estate valuation, retail sales, and even vital data on cremations. The only reason this would be happening is that the economy is failing. China shuts down its economic data. So that's interesting and not great. And as I said, I had tweets that were talking about how Trump was maybe thinking about reducing the tariffs on China. Here's truth from Trump. He says China should open up its market to the United States. Would be good for them. Closed markets don't work anymore. So open up your market to the United States and we can sell to you, and maybe the tariffs will go away and everybody will be happy again. This I thought was just incredible. Wayne Yap was talking about the technology in China. I've heard people say flying from China to the United States, like if you fly from a Chinese airport to Pittsburgh or something like that, it feels like going back in time. Like it feels like you're going from a futuristic society to a society that is like the States flying to Cuba, like you're going back in time a little bit. Anyway, it's interesting. I don't know that I agree, but there's a lot of interesting technology coming out of China. And here is Wayne to highlight it. He says, I'm Singaporean. Singapore is known for being high tech, but our tech is nothing compared to what I saw on a 15-day trip in China in March. From deep-sea sex dolls to electric airships to drones for traffic incidents. So yeah, pretty wild stuff. So apparently there's AI sex dolls that you can speak to and they can respond, and it's pretty wild. These delivery people are errand boys for $2 an hour or something like that. Very, very cheap. Dancing TikTok robots, robot taxis. Robo-taxis are everywhere. AI-powered smart glasses. Here's the airship, which I thought was pretty crazy. And drone delivery, drones monitoring the traffic accidents. It's absolutely crazy, the level of technology, but the robots are scary as all get out, right? Like, they can move very, very convincingly, and apparently this is a TikTok trend. So, man, Canada and the West are importing Islam and banning speech. And I mean, China's got a communist government. They've got speech bans. People disappear in China. I'm not saying China's better or anything to that effect, but with us focusing on social justice and not focusing on improving our technology, improving our society, improving anything, we've been left behind, and they're able to do all sorts of crazy stuff while simultaneously taking over other countries through nefarious means, right? Like I think that China has quite a lot of clout in Canada, and we're not even allowed to talk about it, really. Like not officially, right? Mark Carney's got a lot of ties to China. Nobody cared about that. So that's very interesting. BRICS is reporting Chinese soldiers marching in Moscow's Red Square for Russia's Victory Day parade. China was in the Second World War? That's weird. So we don't have a Victory Day parade in Canada? Didn't we help win the Second World War? No? Nothing. We didn't have any kind of announcement or anything like that, because our history is being like wrapped up and put away. Yuan is responding to Sam Cooper. Sam Cooper says Hong Kong police detained relatives of Canadian candidate targeted by Beijing election interference. Move could leverage Prime Minister Carney after Trump meeting. And Yuan says Mark Carney stood behind a Liberal candidate who called for this man to be kidnapped at the behest of the Chinese government, which has now detained multiple members of his family. And so, like, it's pretty wild. And again, I think that Canadians hear the words and hear things that happen, but they don't register, or somebody says it's misinformation and all of a sudden everything's fine. That doesn't matter. That's mis and disinformation. But it's pretty jaw-dropping that a Liberal MP candidate would say, you should probably turn him in. You get lots of money. And the guy who didn't do anything to mitigate that or punish anybody for that, he left only because I think public pressure pushed him off. Carney did not tell him to step down. And how can anybody support that party? Much less how could the country return that party to leadership very shortly after all of these scandals happen without knowing anything about anything? And I mean, how many Chinese traders were put in by Chinese money and bust in students? We still don't know. And I mean, we're going to go through how many more elections without knowing? Blissfully unaware, and Canadians won't ever really question it. And that's weird, right? Doesn't that seem strange to you? Senator Housakis is talking about the Hong Kong police detaining members of Joe Tay's family. And he says, my question to Mark Carney is now more important than ever in light of this authoritarian aggression and transnational repression. Why did he stand behind his candidate who encouraged Canadians to kidnap Mr. Tay and turn him over to Chinese authorities? Does it look like a joke to you now? So, right, it doesn't seem like a joke. And the other part of this is, if China's got technology like this with dancing robots, how many dancing robots? Maybe you don't train them to dance. Maybe you train them to march, right? And how many dancing robots, how deadly would those things be, even without guns, right? And if you had all of these robots, you wouldn't need to risk any of your actual human assets. You could send the robots in as the first wave and then send in your soldiers as a second wave. And we don't have that kind of technology, not even close, right? If somebody said, can you make a robot dog? We would say, we could order a robot dog from China. Thank you very much, right? Like, and that's not great. And Trump's coming in to try and fix that in the United States. And people are saying, you're being racist, Donald Trump. Look at the tech they've got, for crying out loud. Holy smoke. We don't take seriously our lack of capability, and we don't take seriously what China puts on display just as a matter of course. If they've got that for public use in TikToks, what does their private use and corporate use and governmental labs look like? Because I'm willing to bet they're not having TikTok dances, right? Not with the robots. They're probably doing target practice, right? Making sure that those robots are deadly accurate. So we're losing, and we don't even seem to acknowledge that there's a race on, okay? We're sitting on the sidelines on a lawn chair sipping a beer, unfortunately. Andy Lee says NSICOP members and the newly appointed NDP leader Don Davies performs under the watchful gaze of Consul General Yang Shu. His security clearance, the NDP leaders, needs to be revoked, and he should be turfed from NSICOP. So here is the NDP leader right now. Wild.
你好，我是戴维斯。I don't deserve applause for so little. Consul General Yang Shu, Senator Yuan Pao-Wu, Minister Bruce Ralston, MLA Ben Stewart, diplomatic staff, distinguished guests. I look forward to working with my colleagues in Parliament across party lines to building a mutually rewarding relationship in the years ahead for the benefit of all the people of our two great countries. So once again, congratulations on these important anniversaries, and may you have much success, happiness, and peace in the decades ahead, and may our people prosper by our work together. Thank you very much. 谢谢.
There you go, right? Ni hao. And then some more stuff in Chinese. So pretty wild stuff. Michael is responding to Don Davies. Don Davies says, I'm honored to serve as the interim leader. That's the guy we just heard speaking to the Chinese people. And Mike says the new leader of the NDP, Don Davies, has his comments turned off for the general public and signs his name in foreign language. The NDP have completely lost touch with Canadian workers and continue to put them last. Yep. And the party will continually become diminished because of this. And it looks like Jagmeet Singh has led to the potential bankruptcy of the NDP. Fingers crossed. I'm not sure. It's more rumor than hard news, but the National Post is saying, big kick in the teeth. NDP won't receive campaign reimbursements in hundreds of ridings. So if you have a certain percentage, if you meet a certain threshold in a riding, 10% or something like that, maybe it's 5%, you get a percentage of money per ballot. You get something like $1 or $5 or something like that. Harper, it used to be more, and then Harper cut it in half, and then Trudeau restored a lot of it. But fundamentally, you get paid per vote, and that money comes into your party coffers from the government. And should taxpayers be subsidizing political parties? No, they should not. But that's what we do. And so these are problems that we should fix. Anyway, here's part of the National Post's article to explain just how impactful this will be, and it will be impactful to the NDP. The federal NDP will not be able to rely on hefty campaign reimbursements from Elections Canada to fill its party coffers after its worst ever election result. Only 46 NDP candidates out of 342 received a 10% or more of the votes that would make them eligible for a partial reimbursement of paid election expenses such as travel, salaries, accessibility expenses, and other costs associated with the campaign. This suggests that the party will receive possibly millions less in electoral expense refunds than in previous two elections where over 230 candidates met the threshold for reimbursements. It will likely add to the party's financial woes after a devastating election result. So previously, 230 candidates met the threshold, and now only 46, and that's a huge difference. So you're gonna, if you only get 1 in 4, right, and this is even less than that. Right? So 25% of your usual take after an election. Whew. Take that, NDP. I mean, do you think that they learned their lesson? I do not think they've learned their lesson. Like they're not signaling. I haven't seen any signals that indicate the NDP is going to change track and be their own party or stop supporting the Liberals or anything like that. I haven't seen any kind of indication like that that's going to happen. So they have not learned their lesson. They will continue to push themselves off into irrelevance. The Right News is reporting for the by-election in, where is it? Crowsfoot. I can't remember the name of Battle River Crowsfoot. There it is. Crowfoot. So the People's Party are not running Maxime Bernier. They're running a guy named, what's his name? Jonathan Bridges. And PPC Greater Alberta says, we're very proud to announce Jonathan Bridges as your People's Party candidate for the upcoming by-election in Battle River Crowfoot. And the New Right is happy about this. The People's Party is running a candidate, running a pro-life Christian father of 5 against Pierre Poilievre in the upcoming election. So there you go. We'll see how that all goes. Who knows? National Post is reporting on the Elections Canada problems that happened in this past election. 822 special ballots were left in a return office. National Post says Elections Canada blames human error as over 800 special ballots were misplaced in a BC riding office. So anybody going to get fired? I don't think anybody's going to get fired, unfortunately. And I mean, it's not like you make your career in Elections Canada. So if people do get fired, it's not the accountability I think that people want, right? Let's move into this is kind of a grab bag of money, but it feels to me that they're trying to make, Gov.exe is making the case that the Bank of Canada is now engaging in political announcements to bolster Carney's argument of the whole kind of look of things. And I don't know that this is true. And I mean, it may be true, but I don't know that it's beneficial to scare people the way this is coming across. Seems like it's a politically useful tool rather than communicating with people what's coming, right? Does that make sense? Gov.exe says, Tiff Macklem says Canada's economy survived the pandemic, but now faces its greatest threat, a trade war that could cause a recession, bankruptcies, and foreclosures. We've got the USMCA. Like, all of this seems, the facts on the ground seem different than how people are reacting. And people say they're experts. The experts are reacting the way the experts are reacting because they know, they have insider information. They know how the world works. And I remember the experts during COVID, and they were lying liars. And so I look at this and I think, It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Here's Tiff Macklem. Here we go.
Each year, the bank assesses the stability of Canada's financial system and highlights risks that could threaten that stability. The country's financial system has faced unprecedented shocks in recent years, and it has proven resilient. Households, businesses, banks, and other financial institutions weathered the upheaval of the pandemic and the sharp rise in inflation and interest rates that followed. It was a difficult period for many Canadians, and pockets of stress remain. But proactive steps taken by households and businesses, together with substantially lower interest rates, put the system on a more resilient footing heading into 2025. Now the Canadian economy and financial system face a new threat. A long-lasting trade war poses the greatest threat to the Canadian economy. It also increases risks to financial stability. In the medium term, a prolonged global trade war would have severe economic consequences. It would reduce growth and increase unemployment. This could, in turn, have important ramifications for the financial system. With debt still at high levels, some households and businesses may be unable to keep up with payments. If loan losses occur on a large enough scale, banks could cut back on lending in response. This would exacerbate the economic downturn and put more pressure on businesses and households.
So all of that happened during the pandemic. Then they printed money and made it kind of worse and said, we're helping recovery, but I don't think we've ever recovered from the pandemic. So it's one of those things where I'm very skeptical of the Bank of Canada because it seems like they're on the politician's side instead of the citizen's side, but it's a central bank, so I'm not really that surprised by that either. Matt Miller says Bank of Canada's financial stability report is out. He says the new report says 60% of mortgage holders will see higher payments through less than feared, thanks to recent rate cuts. Still, many Canadians are bracing for financial strain with job losses and defaults possible if the U.S. trade war drags on. The bank and government tout resilience, but their past policies slow rate moves. High immigration and weak support for struggling families helped create these risks. Canadians facing payment shocks deserve more than just warnings and reassurances. Real solutions are needed as households shoulder the fallout. Yeah, a lot of the scarier things being impacted on Canada, I think, are a lot to do with our own tariffs on the United States stuff coming in, because we also import U.S. stuff to make product and then sell back to the United States, right? And the de minimis is a problem, blah, 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 blah. But all of this is problems that I think are self-made. We've done this to ourselves through bad policy, and it's not Trump's fault, and it's not like these economic shocks would be much less if we'd made deals with Germany to sell LNG. You know what I mean? Like, there's all sorts of things we could have done to mitigate the risks and to mitigate the downside, to mitigate the financial downside, but we didn't do any of it. We learned, well, not how long ago, that Trump was going to do these tariffs in February. He started these tariffs in February. He said day one, January, they said, we've got to pivot and we've got to get Canada standing on our own 2 feet and able to sell to other people than the United States. And since then, what has been done? What has been done to move us in that direction? Nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Have anybody talked about pipelines with anybody at all? Like, has Cardi talked about pipelines with Danielle Smith? Has that been like discussed on the public stage at all? She says, oh, very, very encouraging talks. Nothing's happening. It's months later. We have to do this as fast as possible. Let's prorogue Parliament and have an election. Okay, we'll do this as fast as possible, you lunatics. Like, nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. And I don't see anything on the horizon. Here's Danielle Smith saying, our culture in Alberta is very, very clear. And she says it's multiculturalism and broad diversity. I wish I was kidding. I wish I was kidding. Rachel says, Danielle Smith says that unlike Quebec, Alberta's culture is multiculturalism and broad diversity. Is that true? So Danielle Smith's gonna help as much as Doug Ford helps. Here we go.
Speak of Yves-François Blachette's Bloc Québécois leader's comments on a referendum in Alberta, suggesting that you need to identify as a nation, you need a culture, and oil and gas is not culture.
We have a culture in Alberta. We've got a culture of entrepreneurship. We've got a culture that embraces multiculturalism, that has been built from people from all over the world. I think 163 different linguistic groups are represented here, and find a way to forge an identity that's both in keeping with their heritage as well as embracing. Alberta, we've got an incredible relationship and history with Indigenous partners. We have a very different culture than Quebec, because Quebec denies all those things, right? They are only about language, and I don't think that they accept the broad diversity that we do in Alberta, which I know has created such an incredible place for people around the world to keep on coming to. This is the place you achieve your dreams. This is the place aspirationally.
Diversity is their strength. This is where you go to achieve your dreams in Alberta, right? Biggest mosque in North America. No, biggest mosque in Canada? I don't know about North America. Here's Danielle Smith. She says, let me be clear. Albertans want to work with the rest of Canada, but they also want fairness. It's time to secure a new deal with Ottawa, one that respects our contribution and unleashes our economic potential. And this is a minute of Danielle Smith talking about this with Vasi Kopoulos.
Ontario's Premier Doug Ford yesterday was asked about some of the conversation going on around separation, and in particular, your own contribution to that conversation. He made the point, quote unquote, this is a time to unite against the tariffs and other threats from Donald Trump, not talk about things that separate us. Does he have a point there?
I think we've got two issues in Alberta. One is, of course, working with our fellow premiers and the Prime Minister on trying to get a renegotiated Canada-US Free Trade Agreement. But the other is that we need to have a new deal with Ottawa as well. When I talk to Albertans, when you think about how fearful Canadians are of the impact that Donald Trump will have on the economy, that's how fearful Albertans are that an approach that the Liberals have taken for the last 10 years will continue and damage our economy. So I would like to see, and I'm hopeful that we can, I've had a good couple of first conversations with Prime Minister Carney, that we can address some of those pressure points and really unleash all of the investment that we know will happen in Alberta when some of those barriers are out of the way.
So there you go. Do you have any faith in Danielle Smith and Prime Minister Carney for unleashing Alberta's ability to enrich its own natural resources and sell that to the world? LNG, oil and gas, shale, all the rest? No? I don't know. I'm skeptical, because past behavior is a good indication of future behavior, and we haven't done a damn thing to address any of the issues that were brought forward at the beginning of 2025, and we're heading into June. Like, it's early May, but my gosh, by next week, it'll be late May, mid-May. Western Standard says, Alberta First Nation chief took $55,000 to oppose oil stands, oppose Alberta independence. They're paying people off. They're paying people off to lie to you about the support this is getting. Alberta independence people, I'll say it again, if you go through the process with Danielle Smith as your representative, you're going to fail, because she has a vested interest in having it fail, and it's going to fail. So if you want it done, you got to do it outside of the apparatus, and then walk in and say, your apparatus is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. Get out. Here's the paperwork. Get out. And you should action it all simultaneously. Otherwise, it's just not going to work, unfortunately. Anyway, we've got to say goodbye to Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful